is a Bramble Jam podcast. Oh boy, welcome everybody to the first ever, really the second iteration, first ever, we'll explain it, but the first ever episode of the Bramble Jam NBA podcast. My name is Bran. I'm here with my co-host and my good friend, Grayson. Grayson, how are you?
I'm so good, Brandon. It's great to be here.
It's great to be here. Now, some people listening, believe it or not, have heard us talk about the NBA before. We've done this before, a different name of the podcast a couple years ago. And I'll be honest, I'm the reason it failed. This is my fault, Grayson. It's my fault that we're having to redo this, start from scratch.
But we've been here before. We've had this same conversation before.
What do you mean? This conversation about who we are and whatnot?
Well, we hadn't changed the name before, but we did stop and start again. But the thing is, the old podcast did bring us some great experiences.
It brought us some great experience.
We had a lot of good conversations.
Yes.
We got to talk to a lot of good writers.
Yes.
And
Bob Ryan.
Other fans. And we got to go to the All-Star game.
Yeah. Sit almost courtside. Now, I don't know. This podcast didn't necessarily give us that, but we did it anyways.
Our love for basketball.
Our love for basketball. That's exactly right. We were what they call seat fillers, basically for the players and famous people. When the famous people get there, we get kicked out of our seats and told to go home, but we never got.
Technically, we got moved a couple times.
Yeah.
But we ended up being able to sit by each other and enjoy the dunk contest. One of the better ones.
One of the better dunk contests. It wasn't the Aaron Gordon one from last year.
So memorable that
I
don't even remember who won the dunk contest, but I do remember that Steph Curry was in a 3-point shootout.
Yes, and we were right behind Del Curry, and it was a lot of fun. It wasn't Steph and Seth in it?
Steph and Seth and
anyways,
Joe Harris won, I think.
Point is, we've been NBA friends for a long time, real life friends as well, but we like to bond over the NBA. And we're excited about this podcast on the Bramble Jam Podcast Network, a network full of shows that we hope that you really enjoy.
This is the first sports, yeah?
The first sports. We have some Hallmark podcasts. We have some courtroom podcasts. We have a history podcast. And now diving in to the world of sports. And it's very exciting.
Because what else is there to do right now?
What else is there to do right now?
NBA is technically, well, there's some things happening, but NBA is coming.
It's coming. It's coming.
And it's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, we thought about doing the MLS podcast and then realized, no, we're not going to do that.
You have to be able to name at least 5 teams to qualify to have a podcast.
Yeah. The Orlando City Dream. Atlanta Hawks.
I think we're losing our people right now.
Let's talk about the NBA. What qualifies us to talk about the NBA? It's really just our love of the NBA. We're not athletic. We aren't really good at much in regards to holding a basketball in our hands, but we are really good at watching basketball. And I think that's what counts.
Well, yeah, and we both grew up loving the NBA, which in a world of the South in which we live, where there's not a lot of people down here that love the NBA.
Football reigns supreme.
Yeah, football reigns supreme. College football country. And but we grew up loving NBA, and we have stuck by our teams.
That's right.
Which we talked about in our old podcast.
Yeah.
But we're loyal fans.
Yeah. Magic
and we
fan
love the league.
here, Pacers fan there.
Can't tell.
And we're trying our best to stick with them through thick and thin, and I think we're succeeding.
But the bubble environment of March Madness feel potentially, where it's just going to be different.
That's right.
We all missed our March Madness this year. We're getting a little piece of that. Fast action, lots of games in a row, games during the day, yada, yada, yada.
That's
Who
right.
knows what's going to happen?
Now, here's the thing about this podcast. It is not just going to be a free-for-all where we just talk about whatever we want. There's structure. We love the structure. And the structure is we have a few different segments to help guide the conversation. We're going to have a big question of the week. We're going to talk about a player who surprised us. Or a team or whatever, the storyline. We're going to talk about the biggest disappointment of the week. We're going to talk about a bold prediction. And then we're going to have a rapid-fire round at the end. And that's what's going to be the guiding railroads to this podcast.
Yeah, and we're going to hang out with ourselves. We're going to have some friends come and join, some people, some interviews.
That's right.
It's going to be
so
great.
Subscribe. We'll have new episodes out at least every Thursday at noon while you're eating your lunch. you can be listening to the NBA. And that's, I think, what you're looking for.
And then we'll sprinkle in some other ones as they happen.
That's exactly right. You ready to dive into this, Grace?
Oh, I'm so ready.
It's time for our big cue of the week. It's time for the Boom Shakalaka.
Boom Shakalaka!
Boom Shakalaka question of the week. The big question that we are going to be discussing this week is, which storyline, Grayson, of the bubble intrigues you the most? The restart of the season, the bubble. There are so many storylines going into this bubble, whether it be about the conditions of the bubble, whether it be about certain teams and their health or what have you. What, Grayson, I'll go to you first and then to me second, because we're the only two people here. What storyline intrigues you the most?
I think the biggest storyline for me, what do I want to know, is, are we going to make it through this preliminary period where they're all there, hanging out, practicing, scrimmages start next week, got a week and a half, 2 weeks till first game.
2 weeks today.
Are we actually going to get through to a champion?
Yeah.
I think we're going to make it through to a game.
Okay.
Are we going to make it through the playoffs with everything changing in the environment and different things, and CDC finds new things, yada, 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 yada? Are we actually going to make it to an NBA champion in the bubble?
Yeah, the NBA happens to be in the center of the state that is one of the worst states in the world right now in regards to the coronavirus. And so that's going on in Florida. And in the middle of it, you have what is hopefully, and what the NBA and the players and the coaches are saying, is the safest place to be. You've got the craziest state in the country and in the world right now. And in the middle of it, the safest place.
You got Mickey Mouse just protecting
That's right.
the players.
The hedge of protection of the mouse.
But can the players abide by the rules?
Yes.
And stay in that bubble.
Yes.
Enough. Will it even help? 2 players test positive once they've already been tested negative. So inside the bubble where everyone's negative, somehow it lay dormant and then awoke. I don't know.
Yeah.
How's it work? No one knows.
No one knows. That is the tricky thing. And there's so many things that could contribute to this whole thing falling down. If one player is selfish and decides, you know what, I need to get mine, whether that be I'm going to go get food, I'm going to go find a girl, whatever it could
Looking
be.
at you,
all those different storylines that play. We are asking NBA players who are used to a certain way of life to give up that way of life for at least, what is it, at least 7 weeks? It's the bare minimum for these players?
Yeah, to 3 months.
To 3 months to give up a certain way of life for what? For maybe a championship that will have an asterisk next to it.
Well, a lot of money.
And a lot of money, yes. But you could still get paid. That's the thing. You could say, I'm not going to the bubble. You would get a pay cut, but you'd still get paid. Yeah. That's it. That's what you're doing. And so there's so many things that could happen that would pop this bubble. But here's the thing. Here's the good news.
But LeBron James is all in on getting this championship. 2020, horrible
absolutely.
Year. His mentor, boy, guy, Kobe, horrible. I feel like there's a storyline there of LeBron in a Lakers uniform winning a championship. No asterisk, whatever. I don't think he cares. He's very committed. He's very in the zone. But is LeBron's leadership and his one-track mindedness, and obviously there's other teams and players that are with him. We're not hearing about him as much.
Yeah.
Is that enough for all the other players and teams that are there that have no chance?
Yeah. Well, and imagine the conversation then. You know, this would be LeBron's 4th championship chasing MJ's 6. Imagine the conversation if he does get to 6 and one of those 6 is in the bubble with an asterisk next to it. That conversation, this bubble has ramifications obviously for this season for these players, but depending on who wins, this conversation will continue for years to come about how important this season actually was in regards to the legacy of certain players.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously I'm a Pacers fan, so I listened to Malcolm Brogdon did an interview a couple weeks ago. But what they talked about is kind of another way of looking at it is this is a unique season in history. There will be no other hopefully bubble season. So these players do have an opportunity to be a part of something special where they're all down there together. Yes, there's the hardships of missing their families and being in their own beds and traveling to the cities and the culinary aspects of the NBA that we really hadn't thought about before, but a lot of players talking about all the fun things that go along with playoffs and travel and yada, yada, yada. But there is something to the camaraderie and the uniqueness of being inside where they are focused together, practicing, bonding, fighting together for not just basketball, but all of the social justice issues and all the things at play. So there is something really cool and unique about it as well. But the whole storyline of, are we actually going to get through this to a verdict or to a champion? Time will tell.
Yeah, I think the one thing...
What say you, Brian? What is the number one storyline for you?
Well, just give me 1 second. I want to just speak to this one more time. The one saving grace in my mind to at least believing that it could work is we have had a basketball tournament play and finish with the TBT tournament, which was great. And they broke it down. For like when they got there was some tests, and then the further it goes, like after the first week, almost no test positive. So if everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing, absolutely safest place it can be.
And these guys aren't getting paid millions. They get $8 million
they get $8 million
as
split.
a team.
Yes,
for
split.
Winning.
I think they get $90,000, which nothing to turn your nose up at, but still.
And they had some great commentating on there.
Yeah,
Our boy Bob Rathman from the Hawks we talked with on the old podcast.
I was a big fan of what I saw from the TBT. I know I talked about this with my friend Dan from Deck the Hallmark and other podcasts. He thinks I enjoyed it just because of how much I missed basketball, and that could be the case. But the finals game in TBT was great basketball.
It's good basketball. These are guys that were stars or former NBA players. This is a step up from March Madness as far as playing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
They're great players.
Yeah. And you got Joe Johnson, who's always fun to watch.
It was good. All right.
Boom shakalaka!
It's time for my answer. Boom shakalaka. My storyline, and we touched on it just a smidge, but I think there's more to dive in here, is really what I think the storyline of the year was going to be anyways, but it's amplified now. And that storyline is which of the two LA teams is going to go to the finals. That, to me, is the storyline. Because that was obviously the storyline going into the season anyways, but now you have had, 4 months off for Kawhi to deal with any issues that he had, right? With his knee or whatever it was.
Yeah.
To deal with that, to be healthy. And the interesting thing about Kawhi, and we've talked about this before on the old podcast, is Kawhi does not need fans. He does not need someone to trash talk him to get him going. Unlike a lot of players who I think are really nervous about how they're going to get motivated to play without the fans around them, Kawhi doesn't need that. Kawhi is a robot. We aren't sure if he is a human being. And to that, he is such an interesting player going into this bubble because he's fully healthy. We got Paul George, who knows what's going to happen there. So that whole thing there is very interesting. But then you have the Lakers. You have LeBron, who's playing for something bigger than himself. You have Anthony Davis. You have Dwight, who's now in the bubble. But what you don't have is a good point guard. Avery Bradley out. Rajon Rondo hurt his hand, or he just didn't like the hotel. Who knows? So there's so many interesting storylines with both of these LA teams, and who's actually going to make it to the finals. Is either of them going to make it to the finals? I think they will.
Let's say, is it a foregone conclusion it's going to be one of them?
No, nothing is definite here in the bubble. That's the interesting thing. One of my storylines that I ended up not going with, but I'll discuss it here, is what type of team benefits the most from the bubble. Because there's a part of this where a team that's maybe 5 to 8 is actually able to make a first round upset.
Because there's no home court advantage.
There's no home court advantage. You're coming in. It's all about conditioning. Which team is the best conditioned? Because you're only getting 8 games before the playoffs start. That's preseason basically. No one's playing their best basketball the first couple weeks of November. No one. And so it depends on who's the best conditioned and luck. Like some players are going to get injured because they're coming in cold. And so there's that storyline too that's really interesting is like, yeah, I think the Lakers and the Clippers, that's a great storyline to watch. And I think one of them will make the championship. But there's also a world in which some 7-8 seed team just gets lucky because of the way that things are right now.
Yeah, and it's unprecedented. We have nothing to compare this to.
Right.
So we can look at March Madness and say it's a quick, fast-paced tournament. And historically in March Madness, it's the team with the best player or a player that can go off and carry a team on his back for a game. But the difference with that is it's one game. So we've seen Dame Lillard go nuts and win 2 to 3 games the Blazers had no business winning historically. But it's yet to really catapult them through a 7-game series.
I think we will still see the best teams win the series. Like
we'll assume, but we just don't know.
There's it's hard to imagine a world in which the Lakers losing 7 games to an 8th seed, right? Like that's hard to imagine that world existing. But it's hard to imagine the world that we're currently living in existing, and here we are.
For sure, and the storyline of the 8th seed in the West is a lot more interesting than obviously the East because there really is no storyline there.
We'll get there.
But it's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. I think that is the storyline to watch. It's the storyline I'm most intrigued by. And if I am correct, 2 weeks from today, Thursday night, the first game back.
Lakers-Clippers.
Lakers-Clippers.
And I think we'll see. Like, do they even care about that game, though? We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, there's another storyline, again, is how important are these 8 games to the teams that are a shoo-in for the playoffs, right? Like, how much do they care about these 8?
Which is 1 through 7 in the West and virtually 1 through 8.
Yes.
In the East.
Yeah. How much do they care? I mean, I think the seeding of 5 to 8 matter. Like, I think those teams are like, there's a big difference in the East. As a Magic fan, there's a big difference between playing the Bucks and the Raptors in the first round. You're going to want to try to get to that 7th seed if you're the Magic.
Pacers. We don't want to play Boston in the first round.
Exactly. And so there's that type of thing. But if you're 1 through 4, it's like whatever, right? Like, do you even care? Like, I think you're still kind of viewing those first 8 games as preseason, as conditioning, as just getting ready for the playoffs, where there's a select group of teams that are trying to move up in the playoffs.
So you think we're going to get to a champion? You think it's going to work?
I think it's going to work.
All right.
I think, and maybe it's just my naivete showing, but I think we're going to make it.
You believe in the good of the NBA players and the agents and whoever else is there. We saw this video from the Blazers' birthday party last night, and there's a lot of people in there I don't recognize.
I do think
agents, friends. I don't know who they are.
I think that is just their traveling team.
That's
Each
fair.
team has, I think, 40 people, 40 spots, and so you have, the general manager can come if he wants to. You have trainers, etc. We don't know the trainers for the Portland Trail Blazers.
Why, when they're outside playing cornhole or bags or whatever you want to call it, I called it cornhole in Ohio. Are they wearing masks? And then
I don't
in the
know
hotel room inside,
the
they're right next to each other, partying and having a great time.
I don't know the mask rules. The videos I saw of the cornhole was still early on, and so there were still players that were quarantining.
I don't know. I know yesterday the Pacers put out them playing cornhole together with masks. And then last night.
Well, we'll call the snitch line on the entire Trailblazers traveling team.
All right,
it's time for the player and the team that surprises the most. It's time for
He's on fire.
He's on fire. Grayson, which player, which team surprised you the most this week, or really in the past couple weeks since it's the first episode?
Yeah, so we touched a little bit on just the more than basketball that's going on here, and I was impressed by Drew Holiday. His wife, Lauren, who women's soccer team player, deciding to give up his money to black-owned businesses, and he's been super outspoken about social justice stuff, been open about personal experiences he's had, and I think done so in a pretty well-spoken and, like, makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I'm tracking with, it's hard to not relate with what he's talking about. But he's doing something about it. Very practical, giving his money to businesses, and I think I was super impressed by that. And he's making a little more money. Some other players have done it as well. Dwight Howard mentioned he may do it. I know Patty Mills for the Spurs has talked about doing it for a movement in Australia, and I'm I'm impressed. They're giving their money.
Well, and that was such a big thing heading into that. Like, there was the collection of players who didn't feel good about playing basketball right now because of all the things that are going on in America right now, which absolutely, totally get it. And the big conversation was, if we're going to do this, we want to make statements, right? We want to make sure that we're actually playing for something bigger than just basketball. And that does bring me to my
He's on fire
player of the week, which is LeBron James. And I know I am the king of being annoyed at the media for only talking about the Lakers and LeBron James, and so I'm sorry, I'm doing it now. But they came out with these statements that were going to be on the back of the jerseys: Black Lives Matters, equality, etc. A select group of names or sayings or whatever on the back of jerseys. And so all these names were coming out saying, hey, here's what I'm going to be putting on the back of my jersey. Here's what it's going to be. And then you got LeBron James, who comes out and he says, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm going to put my name. You guys know what I stand for. I'm not going to do it. And at that point, it's like, okay, so I don't need to feel bad for thinking that it's a cheap gesture. That was my thing. Like, the whole thing is we're trying to make statements, but the statements that we're making is a select group of sayings pre-selected by the NBA and maybe Chris Paul. Like, that's the selection of names. That's a cheap gesture. And so I appreciate LeBron because I don't love LeBron. But I do appreciate he's a guy who stands up for what he believes in. He's outspoken when he wants to be outspoken. He says what he... And it's bold to be the most famous player in the world, to be playing in the climate in which they're playing, and to say, you know what? None of these speak to what I want to say, and so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
That's bold. That's bold. It surprised me.
It'll be interesting to see who follows suit. I mean, Anthony Davis already said he's doing the same.
Yeah, because Anthony Davis would follow LeBron James into the dark.
Well, yeah.
Then that's fine. But yeah, isn't it like, it's just like, it was like, okay, they're doing this thing. That's cool. And then you saw the list and you're like, okay, that's interesting.
Well, you wonder if they ran it by him first.
They didn't.
It's like you're thinking.
He said.
If you're an NBA players rep or you're in the, whoever makes these decisions, I guess Chris Paul and the Players Association, but you would think they would run it by their most famous, most marketed player to make sure he was on board. But they obviously didn't. Yeah,
they didn't. He basically said, like, nobody asked me, so whatever. Yeah, I just think that I think the NBA should absolutely make statements. Whether or not they're going to put Black Lives Matters on the center of the court or whatever they're going to do there, that's great. But I am absolutely with you. I'm more impressed with players that are actually doing something, like giving their money to places that matter, more so than just saying, hey, yeah, I'll put equality on the back of my jersey.
Yeah, and $5.3 million isn't a little bit of money.
It's not a little bit of money.
I don't think I'll make that much. I don't think the Pelicans are going that far, but it's very generous.
Yeah, and I say this fully acknowledging I'm a white guy who will never understand all the things that are going on right now fully. But at least I appreciate what LeBron's saying. LeBron's not saying that these things don't matter to me. No, he's made it very clear that they do matter to him. He's just saying, like, I am absolutely with the players who are saying, I want to put the names of people who have like, the NBA shied away from the police brutality issue. That's what they did. They said, we don't want to do anything regarding police brutality. So we don't want to put defund the police on the black jerseys. We don't want to put the names of people who have been on the bad hand side of police brutality. We don't want to put the names. We just want to say equality and stuff like that. So, like, on one hand, kudos to the NBA for at least trying to do something. Like, I don't want to say they're not doing something. They're trying. They're trying to figure it out. They still got a business to run. But on the other hand side, kudos to LeBron James for saying, I'm not just going to do something to do it.
For sure. In the NBA, I think Adam Silver's gotten a lot of credit for being pretty player-friendly as a commissioner. And he's pretty much let them do what they want, say what they want, go on rants when they want. And, I mean, you look at social media, you see all the individual players. I mean, Woj obviously got punished, but the players are putting whatever words and whatever things they want out there with little to no consequence.
Yeah.
And I think LeBron is a leader where you don't have to agree with his message. And I know there's people that have different opinions on things, but he hasn't been vulgar. He hasn't been hateful. He's been a leader that people can follow. And I think this is another step and an example of that.
Yeah. And two, like the NBA, like I understand like being a business and being like, how wide do we want to make this net of sayings? Like at the end of the day, like there are still going to be a lot of people that are going to want to watch basketball that are maybe have different viewpoints.
For
that,
sure.
that wouldn't go all the way to defund the police. Like, and that's a pretty wide group of people that aren't ready to make that leap into defund the police. And so I get it. I get that you can't just, and it's a nightmare, I imagine, for the like the people that are making the jerseys, like to just to open it up to any name or whatever. I imagine that's a nightmare.
For sure. And there's differing opinions even within locker rooms and even within management. And there's so many things at play. It's not that simple.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to talk about the biggest disappointments of the week. But before we do, we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. We're back. Welcome back, everybody, to the Bramble Jam NBA podcast. First episode. Feeling good so far, Grayson. How you feeling?
I feel great.
Let's talk about the disappointments of the week, or at least so far kind of in this restart period of time. Grayson, what is your wild shot?
Wild shot!
So, again, I will own this as 100% as a Pacers fan that this is coming. Chris Bosh is trying to piggyback on the success of The Last Dance and the Michael Jordan, and he's writing a series of blogs about his experience with the Heat and their last championship. This week's episode, or this week's blog, he took a cheap shot at the Pacers fans, talking and comparing them to
Chris
Trump.
Bosh is just writing blogs.
He's writing things about his experience, which is fine. He's been out of the NBA. He had the health issues. LeBron and Dwayne
Chris,
Wade
if you
are
want to
still
do a
very
podcast,
much
if you want to do a podcast, just holler at your boy. Like, we can set that up.
I don't know. You might.
Like, who's reading blogs?
Well, apparently somebody. Apparently me, because it got me.
Right.
But he's talking about the Pacers and the 7-game series they had, which were very entertaining, very good for the Heat. They won. Takes shots at the Pacers and how much worse they were. But then he talks about the fans in Indiana, how racist they are, and how they're just like a Trump rally, and made some statements. That's fine. If that's true, I'm sorry. I hate that. I'm not actually from Indiana. I'm a Pacers fan. I haven't been to a ton of playoff games in Indiana. What I want to say, though, is why are you bringing this up now with no examples? Why, Brandon? Why is he just taking cheap shots? We're already kicked down. We're bad. We're a bad team. We haven't won a. We never won a championship.
Bad. You're not bad.
We've never won a championship.
Yeah.
Our fans are probably pretty similar to most of the other league teams in their markets. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Chris Bosh is just trying to do something.
I just want examples. If you want change and if you want to help the Indiana fans be better, and
why did he call it Indiana in particular?
Because he was writing about this season. So when he talked about the Pacers fans, he said some bad words followed by some things. General statements. I just want examples. Show me examples of what people have said. Maybe that could help change. Maybe call out individual people that said things. In The Last Dance, there was the lady from the Pacers that they freaked out about and showed her saying some mean things with some bad words to Michael Jordan.
Yes.
I just don't like general cheap jabs at people from 7 years ago with no substantive evidence.
You're just being protective of your team and your people.
I just like Chris Bosh, stay out of the media.
Chris Bosh
do something else.
Is I've always he's just kind of like a dinosaur, just kind of like lanky and walking around.
Well, he does kind of look like a dinosaur, and we did tell him that. That was one of the chants we screamed when he came to games. So maybe he's mad about that, but that has nothing to do with race.
No, but
or Donald Trump.
Yeah,
like keep Donald Trump out of it.
Yeah. Just like we're trying to do with this podcast. We're going to keep Donald Trump out of it. That's
well, Chris Bosh brought it in.
He brought it in. Is it my turn? It's my turn.
Wild shot!
My wild shot is the Wizards and the Nets.
Yeah, what are they doing? Why are they here?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Just stay home.
We worked so, and by we I mean the NBA worked so hard at figuring out a way to make this not just the playoffs. And so what they did is they came up with this nice thing where if you are within 4 games of the 8th spot, if you're the 9th seed and you're within 4 games of the 8th spot, by the end of these 8 games, then you'll do a play-in game. And we're like, well, that'll be fun. That'll be a fun little thing. And then what the Wizards proceeded to do is basically just stay home. The Wizards got an invite, which they did not belong. And they took that invite and they said, we'll just use it to develop players that, I guess, it's just, what are they doing? And then the Nets clearly don't care anymore. If they don't want to come, don't come. Like, if everybody is going to stay home because they're injured after 4 months of not playing basketball, then just don't come. We'll just do 7 teams in the East because, let's be honest, that's really all that matters in the East. And that's even debatable. Whether or not the Magic should even be there is debatable. The East is miserable. And so why are we inviting teams like the Wizards who clearly don't want to be there? And if the Nets are going to say, we're the 7th seed, but we're just going to still stay home because this season doesn't matter, let them stay home.
Look, I was all in on the taking away the conferences and making the best 16 teams make it.
I agree.
Because you have the Pelicans, you have the Blazers, who with Dame Lillard in the playoffs, who knows what could happen.
Absolutely.
The Grizzlies, who have some exciting young talent. So you have a lot of teams there in the West that could be there for the teams in the East that obviously don't. I agree with that.
Absolutely. Let's be perfectly clear here.
And a Lakers NBA Finals would be very exciting.
Yeah, the reason they did what they did is because they wanted to at least create a chance for Zion to make the playoffs. That's the only reason they did what they did. But what we ended up having is an Eastern Conference who's in shambles with the Wizards and the Nets.
But the advantage is to the teams that play them in the restart.
Absolutely.
So
I mean, as a Magic fan, I'm pro the Nets being miserable because we play them twice. We're only, I think, a game or maybe half a game out of 7. So, of course, I'm all about that. But what's going to be a riot is when the Nets and the Wizards have to do a play-in game to see who's the 8th seed, and both of them just want to go home. Like, that's what's going to end up happening. They're both going to be miserable.
Let's talk about why are you behind the Nets in the first place?
What do you mean?
Why are you behind them in the standings currently?
We don't need to get into that. All I know, though, we've had some hard times. All I know is that both of those teams clearly do not want to be here. So don't let them be. Just let them stay home.
I'm in. Because potentially those are teams that could get everybody sick.
Yeah.
We don't want to be there. We have nothing to play for. But the other way of looking at it is maybe the players that didn't care, the big name celebrity players that are at home, maybe that's for the best. Maybe the guys that are there are trying to find spots and create a future for themselves, and they're actually going to follow the rules, and maybe it's for the best, Brandon.
Yeah. I was personally shocked that Kyrie wasn't going to come to the bubble.
Really?
No, not at all. That guy hates basketball. There, I said it.
He's real good at it, though.
He's good at basketball, but he hates it.
Yeah, I don't.
He does not love this game. He doesn't love it. Hey, are you ready to dive into our bold predictions of the week?
Oh, I'm so ready.
From long range.
From long range, the bold prediction of the week. Grayson?
My bold prediction for the week is the first hospitalization in the bubble will not be because of COVID. It will be because of a brawl that breaks out in a hotel room.
Whoa! Where is this coming from? Do you have insider info that there's some...
I've read some articles about some things
going
on and some partying, some drinking.
Really?
Some weed.
Because from what I gather, and by gather I mean from Dwight Howard's Instagram, it basically seems like everyone's just staying in their hotel rooms at night. They're throwing these parties, DJs and stuff, and Dwight Howard's the only one down there drinking pina coladas.
Well, maybe someone's going to come and infringe on his solo time, and they're going to get in a fight. I'm not going to make enough of a bold prediction to say who I think is going to fight, because then I don't want to get in there, be accused of all kinds of things. What I'm going to say, though, I think there will be a fight. Probably won't be about maybe things it usually is about, because they protected them from a lot of people being in there. But I think people are going to get bored. Like you said, there's teams that don't necessarily care about being there. Guys are going to get antsy. They're going to... Something's going to make them mad either in practice, or they're going to say something about someone else. They're going to get caught snitching.
I have a bold prediction about your bold prediction. I have a bold prediction about your bold prediction. If this doesn't happen in the next week, it's not going to happen. Once basketball starts, it's
no, I agree. I think it's 100% right now. It's
going to have to happen.
Shakalaka Are these guys really going to own up and be mature and abide by rules?
Yeah.
There's a lot of tension going on anywhere.
Yeah.
But in this bubble, take away their families, take away a lot of their probably protection. And
the worst part, I think, of going to the taking away the family, the worst part about taking away the family is that these players were with their families for 4 months straight, which is longer than they've ever been with their families before. You got players with young kids who got to spend more time with their kids than they ever have before. Yeah, and then you go from spending every day with them to being like, you can't even see them. Imagine being, again, I know I bring up the Magic a lot, but imagine being the Magic. They're 15 minutes away from their family, and they can't see them.
Yeah, and like me and you, who are, I think we're both homebodies, but we both have young kids. You get away from your kids for 3 to 5 days, maybe even a week, and it's like, oh, I can sleep in. Oh, I don't have people crawling on me and pulling my ears and yelling and screaming and disobeying. And it's kind of nice for a couple of days, but then you get past that half a week to a week mark, and you're like, I really miss my family. I really miss my wife. I miss my kids. So these guys have probably coming past the point where they're like, oh, I actually have some freedom with my boys. It's nice. But now they're going to get to like, yeah, I miss them. I actually love them.
They're just getting to the point of a long road trip in the season. You get a couple of those in a year where it's like,
month.
Yeah, you get a couple of those a year where it's like 10 days, 12 days max, your cross country trip, and then you're back home. So now you're at that point where they're normally coming back home, and it's like we're not even like a fraction of the way there.
And I just think they're used to certain things on the road and certain privileges and certain experiences, whatever. I don't know. I don't know what it's like to be an NBA player. We've all read the stories and heard the things, but they're in a bubble now where they're very protected, and I think there's going to be some
surrounded by dudes. Let's just say it. They're surrounded by dudes.
Yep.
At a certain point, that's going to pay
testosterone's going to play in. Someone's going to get mad about something, and I just think there might be a brawl.
Yeah. I will, like, once basketball starts, though, it is very fast. Like, we have basketball games all day, every day for 4 weeks straight, basically.
For sure. And it's not like these guys are there because they've given in to, whatever. These are the hardest working, best athletes in this sport, in the world.
Sans Nets Wizards.
Yeah, and they're... But even those guys that are crazy and saying crazy things, the J.R. Smiths of the world, that dude works super hard. And is super disciplined to what he does when he's in the mode of playing basketball. But they get, I don't know, we'll see. I think there's going to be a fight.
My from long range is this. We are less than a week ago yesterday, or a week yesterday, from the first scrimmage games. It's 4 scrimmage games next Wednesday. My bold prediction is that there's going to be one big name injury in one of the first 4 scrimmage games on Wednesday. There's going to be at least one big name injury.
So big name, what's the qualification? We're talking all-star? We're talking starter?
We're talking starter.
Okay.
One season-altering injury from a scrimmage game. Because, and it's important to note this, most players take about a month off, and then come late August, early September, they're starting to condition. And then in early October, they're getting back together. They're for training camp. They're playing 5-on-5. What has happened here is we had 4 months off, and a majority of those players don't have basketball hoops at home. Like, it's true. Most of them are saying they didn't have basketball hoops at home. He could have bought one, sure, but they didn't have one. And so, like, you are, 1, not conditioned, and 2, you haven't really played much basketball over the past 4 months. And what you have done in this bubble is you brought them in unconditioned. You gave them 2 weeks of practice, and then you're saying, let's do some scrimmages. I don't know. It sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and I've never been to an NBA practice. I know what my practices were like in high school. And what are they like running lines and like they line up and shoot free throws, and if they miss, the whole team has to run. If they make it, then you get
It depends on what they're focusing on. I mean, I know every team has had a different approach of easing into this.
You don't think the players that are there were conditioning at home and like super disciplined to have regiments and things?
From what I gather, some were, some weren't.
And I think we'll find that out.
Like from what I gather, Luka wasn't doing much conditioning at all.
But he's making lots of trick shots these days.
He's making lots of trick shots. I love Luka.
Not my hot take because I don't know, but I wouldn't mess with the Mavericks in this tournament.
Oh my gosh, man. Here's the thing.
They got some guys.
Yes.
And Luka has played in front of some weird environments, and he's done some fast-paced
Luka doesn't need to be conditioned. Luka can just do whatever he wants.
I'm just saying.
Luka can do no wrong.
Lakers Clippers don't want to play the Mavericks in the first or second round.
You want to talk about a guy who loves the game of basketball? It's Luka. Doesn't matter if he's conditioned.
Oh, he should be on the Pacers.
Gosh, he's so good. Yeah, someone's going to get injured, though. Like, I agree. They're NBA players. They know what it takes. Most of them, hopefully, were doing some sort of conditioning. But you go from, having probably about 2 months to get ready for the season to having 2 weeks. That's what happened. They went from 2 months to 2 weeks to get ready for the season.
Yeah, I hope. I mean, I don't disagree with you.
I hope it doesn't happen. I'm not saying I hope an injury happens. Obviously, no
I
injury.
don't. I kind of do hope a fight happens, so I'm not going to say I don't hope a fight happens.
But I it's just a lot but they're NBA players. They should be able to handle it. And that's just me being somebody who's looking at someone who's making $1 million a year and just being like, why were you not running every day? Put on a mask, run.
Yeah, you run every day.
Of course. Look at my body. Great. I think that someone's going to get injured, and I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
All right.
We did it, everybody. We did it. We are here for our last segment. This last segment is a rapid fire. It's our At the Buzzer segment. I'm going to play our outro music. Here's how it's going to work. I'm going to play our outro music, which is about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And we're going to get to some headlines. We're going to say goodbye. And hopefully we do it all in time.
I'm in. I'm up for the challenge.
But if we don't, follow us on the social medias at Bramble Jam NBA.
Email us at
bran@bramblejampodcast.com with any thoughts that you have.
If you have ideas for what we're doing right now, rapid fire, let us know.
Let us know. Because we're not going to get to every headline. There's a lot of them going on. And I hope that you'll be back next Thursday, in case I don't get to say that at the end. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
It's time for At the Buzzer. All right, Grayson. You're a Pacers fan. Big headline. Victor Oladipo originally wasn't going to play. He came into the bubble. Now he's saying it's a possibility. 2 questions. 1, do you think he's going to play? Second question, do you think he should play?
First of all, you're the first person to tell me when he said he wasn't playing. I was a little upset. We talked about your whole theory on players that don't love basketball aren't going to play. So I accused him of, the whole masked singer thing.
I know
it. Maybe he doesn't care. He wants to be a singer, yada, yada, yada. I think he does care. I think he's trying to protect his future. I think he's not sure what Indiana's going to do as far as buying into him long term. They have not made that clear. But I do think he got down there. He wants to play with his teammates. He wants to prove that he can do it. I think he's going to play. And obviously it's a good thing because if he sucks, then we just put him on the bench.
Okay. 2 players already in quarantine for breaking protocol.
Had you heard of either of them before they broke protocol?
Of course I hadn't. Okay. Of course I hadn't. But I am not even a little bit surprised by this. What I am surprised at the ridiculous excuse that both of these players weren't aware of the protocol.
Yeah.
You got a player who in the initial quarantine period left his room. I knew that. I knew you had to stay in your room for 3 days. Everyone knew that. One player crossing the line to go get fast food. Just don't do that. They deserve to be quarantined for being so dumb.
Yeah. Take away their money.
Last one, snitch line. Lots to talk about the snitch line. There's been some calls made to the snitch line. Snitches get stitches, but should they? Would you call?
I would not call because I would confront people man to man. But on this topic, kudos to the NBA and the snitch line because in a day where you can find out anything you want to know, we do not know who called and we do not know what they said. All we know is the people that have admitted that they were confronted that they were called a bout.
We all know who it was. It was
so
Chris
it's secretive.
Paul. It was
but
Chris
it's secretive.
Paul.
They're protecting the players who are calling, so
they
it's
are.
working.
Congratulations. I would absolutely call the snitch line, but I would do it on things that didn't actually happen and just hope for the best. LeBron James, he's outside. He's crossing the line. What are they actually doing investigative reporting, or are they just putting him immediately in quarantine? Hey, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back next Thursday with another episode. Follow us on the social medias at Bramble Jam NBA. We'll be back. Talk to you soon. Go Magic.
Go Pacers.